my goodness, Kate, last week when we tried to do this, I'm going to run people through this story because this was absolute insanity. I was looking for my mic to do this podcast for a good 30 to 45 minutes before we actually met. I was sweating from head to toe. Could not find it anywhere. Thankfully, you were so gracious. We still hopped on the call and talked it all through. But I mean, about 5 minutes after I stopped talking with you, it was in my toddler's toy chest. Not even in the living room where we're doing the podcast. I mean, in my daughter's room, in a toy chest. Like, how did it get there? Who knows? I have no clue.
She's watching mommy. She's trying to emulate. And as soon as you were telling me this story without knowing, I'm like, do you have kids? Because it sounds like, first of all, if you have kids, you're my own personal hero, especially small kids, and you get anything done. I'm like, how does your hair and makeup look that good? You look gorgeous and you have a small child. How are you doing this? But Aww. I'm like, oh, it's like at least the dog didn't eat it. But yeah, I'm like, it sounds like a kid took it. Like, oh, I want to be like mommy. Take mommy's stuff.
Yeah. Well, thankfully I have it. And thankfully we can actually do this podcast now. So thank you so much for coming on today and chatting with me. I appreciate it.
I'm so happy to be here. Thank you for having me. I love teaming up with fellow journalists. We've been through a lot. We're very misunderstood people. And, I like to hear from people. I wish I would have had myself, 20 years ago. So I think it's just good that we talk about things and what it's really like and what to expect and experience.
You said that your family came from a line of high achievers. Can you tell me about your childhood?
Yeah, so it was just kind of expected from me growing up that you got good grades, you performed at a high level, you did all the sports and all the things. And I guess it wasn't expected of me to be the star soccer player or star swimmer. I guess I took that on myself. I think I have a lot more knowledge now than I did back then, but I felt, and now I certainly know for sure, it was communicated that you needed to perform, or I thought I had to achieve or perform to get love or to be worthy of love or to be worthy of whatever these adults needed from me, if that makes sense. Be a nice girl and look pretty and get good grades. And it helps if you're the star athlete and all of those things. And so I think sometimes we're shown things or we feel the expectation of the family and society that we're born into, and I'm grateful for it. My parents are both, wonderful people, and my brother is too, and he's gone on to be a doctor and helps heal a lot of people and keep them healthy. I don't have children of my own, which is interesting part of my journey, but if I did, I would ingrain in them from day one that you are lovable and worthy. Because you don't have to do anything to get my love.
And it makes sense coming from this line of high achieving and everything that you would go into a job like journalism that is a public facing, public figure kind of job.
Yes, that's what else has come out in my healing journey is that I have chosen careers, be it entertainment reporting, TV news anchor and reporter, TV presenter all over the world with QVC, home shopping, working as a professional model in New York and abroad. It was all the careers where you are most likely to be judged, picked apart, criticized. It's all about performance and appearance and a lot of superficiality. And as you know, being on camera and news or reporting, like you have to be smart. Like you're a dummy, you're not going to last that long. Like looks can really only take you so far when you've got to have facts down. You got to be able to perform on a dime. And especially in journalism, I mean, I think a lot of people don't know that. Even I remember my friend once said, like, so do you have a teleprompter out in the field? And I'm like, there's no teleprompters like in the Everglades when I'm going live. They're like, oh, it's all in your head. I'm like, it's all in my head, And, even when I am reading off a teleprompter, 99% of the time I wrote every word that I'm reading. So it is interesting, though. I think we're always, as we go about our lives, trying to work out our childhood wounds and our relationships and our careers, whether we fully realize that or not.
Well, and I was reading some of your book, and you said in it, it took a hefty wake-up call to change the way I looked at myself and life. Can you walk me through that moment?
It's like getting me emotional because today is actually Sam's birthday. And and I lost him, who was a dear friend and boyfriend, along with another dear friend, to suicide in 1 year. It's now been 10 years. Um, think about them every day. And they were, the life of every party, successful, beautiful, brilliant, kind, cream of the crop gentlemen who chose to leave us. And at the time, I didn't understand why anyone, especially someone as successful as that, would choose to leave. Um, but I think having my own dark moments through these tragedies and some others, I have had moments that make me sad, actually, where I've had my own dark thoughts of like, I understand why people would do it. I think the difference is going and getting help and having the tools to work through that, which so many of us don't have because of our culture. And mental health in America is so underfunded and under-resourced. And I think men are scared to admit that they're struggling. I think all of us, but especially men. So that definitely changed the trajectory of my life and career. A woman who, like most of us, placed all my worth outside of myself and the externals, and having to go on that inner journey and find worth and value and love on the inside and not through anything I was doing or how I was looking or the money in the bank and things like that. And so it is that reminder every day. And I think as I honor him today on his birthday, um, everything I do is to honor him and talk about these things and keep myself in check. And I've placed my health as my number one priority. And I'm learning that sadly, when we do that, we lose a lot of people because I think a lot of people, I say this with nothing but love, a lot of people are unhealthy. So they don't really like it when you're healthy. I think they feel exposed and it's hard to relate. So um, I see why a lot of people don't take on the hard inner work because it's painful. But I'm grateful for the tragedies and traumas in my life because they've made me a deeper, richer person, and I've used them as catalysts for great transformation. I wouldn't wish it upon anybody, and I'm also grateful for it. Makes me feel like a really rich person and something no one can ever take away from me.
Thank you for sharing that. We don't talk about it a lot on the podcast, but with grief, and especially in our industry, we are taught to put on a brave face a lot of the time, put on a big smile, carry on with our day, when we can be going through a lot of things internally, when externally we're showing how successful we might be, how recognized we are. It might look glamorous from the outside when you could be struggling on the inside.
I see that all the time. And I think the people who are pretending to have it together the most are the ones who are perhaps struggling the most. Because for me, I have no shame crying in public. If I run into you on set or in studio or out in the field or here and you say, hey, how you doing? If I'm not doing okay, I'm not going to be like, oh, I'm great. Let's get started. I'm going to say, I'm really struggling today. And I will show emotion. And I think it's strength, not weakness. And I think my hope and wish for everyone is that they can just be more present with themselves and their emotions and name and claim their emotions rather than numbing and suppressing or pretending. And this constant mask that we're wearing or feeling like we have to be on and perform when what's beautiful is just being real. And I think that's why I love the podcast space so much, especially when it's hosts that just let you show up as you are, whether it's what you look like or I'm put together because I just came off of national television. I know you just did TV as well. So we're looking the part, but it's like, how are we on the inside? And I feel like those were the moments that my news director actually did celebrate the most is when I wasn't so stoic on camera and I'm at a shooting and a child was just killed. And I spoke to how devastated I was and you could hear it in my voice. And I think it's always a good idea to show our humanity and extend that to others because I think if people think like, oh, well, she's holding it all together, then I have to. And we do ourselves a disservice when we don't allow the emotions to come out.
Well, and that's why I'm so happy to talk with you because you've interviewed business leaders, performers, public figures in the health and wellness space and the self-help space, but you also walk the walk. You've been an anchor and a reporter and a journalist, so you really know firsthand what it's like when people come to you asking for help. You're like, yeah, I get it, you know?
Yeah. And I think that's one of my favorite things about myself and life is that, my pain gives me an x-ray lens into your pain. And sometimes I have to, really protect myself energetically because it isn't appropriate to be sobbing on national TV, for instance. So you're like, okay, after this hit, I can go, have that moment. Um, Depending on what the segment is, but certainly when I'm selling beauty products, it's not appropriate. So, I do appreciate that I'm able to hold space for people. It makes me a better, not just a coach and podcast host and journalist, but better human, better friend, better relative. If you're interested in journalism and telling stories, which are about our humanity, it's so important to deeply listen, not to what's being said. What isn't being said? What does this mean in the collective sense? Not making it about ourselves, not just waiting to respond or the next answer, but really listening to what that person's saying. And one of my favorite examples of this from very early in my career on the red carpet in Hollywood, I was probably 23, maybe 24, and it was Tommy Lee Jones, who was one of my more challenging interviews of my career and was not warm and fuzzy. And a reporter asked him something like, blah, 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 how are you doing? Your big premiere. And he said, well, not well. My grandmother just passed, or something to that effect. And the journalist said, oh, that's so great. So what was it like working with Tom Cruise or whatever it was? And he got so pissed because the person clearly didn't. Maybe they did hear that he had lost a loved one, but they didn't acknowledge it or offer condolences or empathy or sympathy. And he left the red carpet and just was done. And I'll never forget that. And it was such a good example of what I'm talking about in a professional setting, but also I think what we've all done to each other in a personal setting. And it's so dismissive. And who wants to feel dismissed? I mean, for me, I think the most valuable gift you can give anyone is the gift of your presence, the gift of your attention. And for me, I think that's my mission in life. One of them certainly is nobody to feel unseen or unheard or unacknowledged in my presence. We brush
Mhm.
things off all the time. You might say, I'm absolutely exhausted today. And I might just say, what time do you want to get together? And I hate when people do that to me. I want to say like, oh, what's going on? You might say, well, this, and this. And, would this help? Or, do you want feedback or advice? Or do you just want me to listen? Do you want to reschedule? And you're like, no, it'll make me feel better if we get together. But when we get together, can we please not talk about work? Can we just talk about our vacation we're taking in Italy next summer? And so I think just the more we can communicate in that way. And I'll ask people all the time, even before an interview, if there's an opportunity, like, hey, the coach in me says, what would make this a success for you? And I find even a lot of people have a hard time answering that question. So I can tell they haven't done coaching and they don't have coach training, which is fine. But it's letting people think deeper. It's more than just like, well, I want to sound perfect, or I want to talk about the movie, or I want to say this. It's, like in this instance, it'll feel like a success if I show up and I'm present, I have a good time, and I just let whatever's meant to be come out. Not like, oh, I got to make sure I say this, or I got to talk about this, or is my hair perfect? I don't have the art behind me that I want, so it's an ugly background. It's like, who cares about the background when you're having a meaningful connection?
Right, right. This brings up a fantastic point because on the podcast, we talk a lot about the technicalities of going from question to question. And if you don't listen to the other person, it comes off awkward. Obviously, it comes off awkward. But we're also missing a key component of it in that it just comes off disrespectful. It comes off not human if you just move on to the next person and you're not listening to what they say next. Does that
Yeah,
make sense?
it does. And I really encourage, and I'll even say challenge. I don't know, all ages, I'm sure, are listening to this, but for some people just starting out, I challenge you to, not have everything written down, to not have all the questions, to have an idea. Yes, certainly be prepared. Okay, I want to make sure I ask this. But I like to be prepared. And I think for me, at least, I get so deep into stuff where, and I might even forget to ask a few things I wrote down, but I'm so deep because we might get in and I might talk to you about what it's like to be a mom. That's what I'm doing this podcast on. But you may say something 5 minutes in and we go off on a whole different direction, which was where we needed to take the conversation that day. I can have you back on another time to ask about being a mom. But again, I've done so many different things in this line of work. A friend of mine had a press junket company. So Sometimes I was a journalist, and sometimes he would hire me to sit next to the movie star all day and like tell the journalists how much time they had. So all the journalists would be like, "What are you doing? Why are you in this role today?" But I love working for the company because I learned so much. And even these celebrities who are doing 40, 50 interviews a day, you'd see how bored they'd get. They're like, everyone asks the same boring question. And then I saw, if you, again, I was 22, 23. I saw if you ask them something unexpected, something they like to talk about. Everyone loves talking about their kids or their pets or their vacation or whatever. And let's say you have 1 minute left with Johnny Depp, which I did. And I'm like, oh, he has a 3-year-old. I wonder if she visited set on Pirates of the Caribbean and what that was like. So with 1 minute left, because we only got 3 minutes with him, I asked about his daughter, Lily, visiting set. And he gave me like a 6-minute answer. I never seen the guy light up more. And so it was a good lesson in, if you want to expand the time with someone who a publicist or it's a celebrity, a president, a political figure, you get 2 minutes with them. Ask them something. It's like, I'm sure or they don't get asked a lot. Then they're going to light up. They're going to give you a longer answer. You're going to get better sound bites, a much better interview and a package to put together. So be creative. Think about, I challenge myself. Okay, I'm sure Tom Cruise has been asked 8,000 times what it was like working with Angelina Jolie today. What else can I ask him about? Or even just, I think as journalists, you have to have instincts and intuition and just take yourself to that set. And it's like, I think meditating on it or zooming in before and being willing to go a completely different direction without judging you or the person if it goes off the rails or is unhinged, or you might get a difficult subject who isn't going to answer your questions, who's going to be in a bad mood, who you're like, whoa, they're really closed off. How can I open them up? So it's a challenge.
Before we dive even further into this, I want to know, how did you go from a career as a broadcast journalist into what you do today in coaching people?
With coaching, it was around that time where I lost Sam and Rolf to suicide and really wanted, to educate myself more psychologically. And so I was called to get training at Columbia University and whole person coaching techniques and neuroscience and positive psychology. And it was really, I think a lot of things we do are to help ourselves and then be able to extend that outward. But before you can help others, you do need to equip yourself with the tools and education and experience. And I can't state that enough, because now everybody calls themselves a coach or a model or a journalist. And it's important to have those credentials for longevity, certainly, and to honor the craft and the business. But that was kind of how that came about. But and then what I've loved is really combining journalism and coaching, because then you have a deeper listening capacity. You have a different skill set that, they really play nicely with each other, if you will. So I think it sets yourself up for an even better interview process and experience. So I it's a great thing to explore as well.
Well, and you've interviewed public figures and business leaders. What's a commonality that you see between all of these types of people?
I think all high achievers ultimately struggle with legacy, if you will, where it's a lot of my clients have reached the pinnacle of success as defined by society in terms of wealth and status and education and things like that. And so then it's kind of like, well, what's next or what else? And I've experienced that, not that I'm a billionaire or anything like that yet, but it's almost like, is this as good as it gets? Or I've done everything that society says should make me feel fulfilled and like a success. And maybe you are a success externally, but the inner fulfillment is simply not there, because inner fulfillment, again, we all pay lip service to it and know it intellectually, but it really is an inside job. And so I think with a lot of my clients, they don't need my help with their career. They've got it. They need help with feeling worthy outside of that career, or they're transitioning from, star athlete, professional athlete to maybe they want to get into broadcasting. Maybe they want to start their own business, but their identity is so intertwined with that. So they don't know who they are outside of the football field or basketball court or CEO boardroom. I invite everyone to define what success is and have it be something that's always being redefined for self. And Maybe you work a little less, but you're super healthy. You have time to care for yourself, eat good food, and go to the gym. Maybe you're making a little less money, but you have more time with your family. You have more time to have that time affluence and do what you actually want.
Yeah, how do we stop equating our worth with our success?
I think a lot comes with age. In my personal experience, I've had to essentially like be destroyed by a person or career or life itself. I've been beat up a bit by life, but again, I'm grateful because I feel stronger and tougher. I just got an image of Mike Tyson in the ring, and so I kind of feel bad for anyone who comes for me at this point because I feel pretty unstoppable at this point, but it's been a long journey here. I think if you get knocked down enough times, you start to realize that that stuff really doesn't matter. If you are doing more things that make you feel good about yourself, um, it's kind of like then that kind of is secondary. Again, we all have bills to pay. We all want to do things, but when I think of my legacy, it's deeper than, oh, she was really good at this or really good at that, or where I want to go. And people could say this, I have this vision of where I'm going and what to do. But I hope ultimately, like, if you were to say something, be like, yeah, I had her on my podcast and she was just so genuine and spoke from the heart, and I left that conversation feeling really lit up. I mean, that is success to me. Rather than like, I had Kate on, she, made $2 billion with her company last year, but she was so distracted. She was rude. She was kind of a jerk. There's so many wealthy people doing so many horrible things. And there's wealthy people, Taylor Swift just came to mind, who's doing good things with her money. So I think it's just asking ourselves who we want to be. And if it is that we are in a space of needing to prove, we have something inside to heal, which I would guess came from childhood.
Yeah, how can we show up as great, effective communicators on air as well?
Mm. I mean, the first thing I heard was like my vocal warm-ups. I always do my chest resonators, and I've done so much speaking training for keynotes and TEDx and that thing. So I'm like, first and foremost, vocal warm-ups. But what are vocal warm-ups? It's getting in your body. So whatever speaking you're doing, it's getting in your body. Meaning you're not just saying the words, you're embodying them. Like, why are you saying this first line of this weather report, this news story, this speech? Giving our words meaning, but that's why, again, not everybody, but people who are trained and can be on television or speak, people can deliver words. But half the time people say stuff and I'm like, again, politicians are coming to mind. I'm like, I don't believe them because they're not embodying it. A,
Yeah.
they're not living it. B, but you can tell the difference. So again, this goes to what we were saying. It's doing that work where, but even if you haven't done a bunch of inner work, if you do the vocal warm ups, they get you in your body so that when you go to deliver whatever you're delivering, it's more of that flow rather than like, what am I saying and what comes after this, and memorizing. But it becomes a part of you because
Yeah.
and rehearse, I mean, or spend time with it. But I think getting clear on like, what am I saying and why am I saying this? Even with you going out with a script, it's not a script. It's like, what's the story here? The headline is we're having a historic rainstorm in Los Angeles in June. This never happens. And so and I think bringing storytelling, again, our humanity, bringing storytelling into our communication, people remember that more than the spec sheets type of
Yeah.
content.
Yeah. And I want to know, because a lot of women in our industry are either dealing with layoffs,
Mm.
they're realizing this job isn't for them, or they're getting cut from their job, they're losing their job. And when that happens, it can feel like a loss, it can feel like grief, because no longer do they have what they so long identified with. So they say, for example, I'm not a news anchor anymore, so what am I? And I just want to know, what advice would you give to that person that maybe just left their job or was laid off and now they don't have that job to run back to immediately, where they are on camera, where they are recognized, where they are getting this external recognition?
I would answer that question with a question, the journalist and coach in me, but who are you? Who are you without your news anchor job? Who are you if you're not Sarah Smith from Fox 5? Who are you if you're not Sally's mom? Who are you if you're not John's wife? Who are you if you're not Carol's daughter? And to keep asking and then really listen. I invite you to do this in a quiet space alone without any distractions and ask yourself these questions. And I have empathy and compassion for anyone who loses their job. I feel like I've been there 8,000 times. At this age, I'm really tired of it. I'll be cruising right along, and it's the nature of the beast. I have reinvented so many times. I've moved all over the country more times than I can count, and I'm tired. Like I'm not 26 anymore. So that said, it's been such a practice and really figuring out who I am without all of that. And while it can feel like a long, arduous process, I will say when you take the time to really figure out who you are, what matters, what values you have, what you stand for, I feel like once you really nurture that vessel, a mind, body, spirit, you become the person who just naturally attracts the right people and experiences and opportunities. Even I was at QVC earlier today and I met a woman and she's like, I was out of this business for 15 years. I couldn't get back in for one reason or another. And she's like, I just forgot about it, essentially. So another way of saying that is surrendered. She's like, and then I got a call out of the blue asking me if I was interested in this, and I'm back and I love it. And I said, I have a similar thing. And even I just, after stepping away, and this is just like one client, but stepping away, got a call like, hey, can you come back? Hey, are you local? And I wasn't local, but I made myself available. And so I think being open to that. And then sometimes you may get another news anchor job and you think, you know what? I am not in alignment with these people, with this city, with this environment. And being open to like, okay, how can this make me better? Or maybe it's just like, okay, I'm clear on what I don't want. And then I just feel like the universe will present you with someone else. I'm not saying this is easy. I'm not saying it happens in a day. Like I'm even in a process, and opportunity for me has been so delayed this year. But it's so interesting because if it would have happened, let's say in April, and it's now December, financially much better. I'd already be doing my thing. I say to the universe, like, I don't need any more tests. I don't need any more delays. I don't need to like prove that I can do this. But if I'm really, really honest, I think this is the key too. If we're really, really honest with ourselves, even meeting my husband, I think I'm so glad I wouldn't have been a match for him 2 years ago. Or I could have gotten this huge opportunity in April and I could have sabotaged it in some way. Or I could have done something where maybe the ratings were low or this happened. I think, so it's spending that time becoming that person that when you get that job, the phone call, I think of football players too. It's like, they could be like, I got cut. I'm just going to eat pizza and drink beer and chill and watch football. But if they're like, you know what, I got cut, I'm going to get in even better shape. I'm going to practice even harder. So when the call comes, and then it'll get around like, hey, I've been working out with so-and-so. I have never seen him more fit. Then you get the call and then you're ready.
Yeah, and my podcast title is called I Am Not a Weather Girl. And of course, that means I'm a meteorologist. But what it really, really means is that I'm not defined by my title. I'm not a weather girl. I am a mother, a wife, a friend, a multi-passionate person, a creative person, like all of these other things. But also, how do we strip away all of those labels and really align with who we are?
My life kind of burned down. And so you can go both ways. So you can go into debauchery, you can go into drugs, alcohol, all sorts of other things, really bad habits, or you can go into self-improvement. And I've just had this obsession with, I never want to feel like this again, like how I felt. And so I was questioning. And I think anyone listening to this who is in journalism, it's about questions. It's about questions. But like, let's ask better questions, starting with ourselves. We go and do all this research to interview the celebrity or whomever, but we're not doing that taking that time to research ourselves. Like, why do you get so triggered when people are disrespectful? Why do you love doing the weather so much? Or, whatever that thing is, like to do the research on ourselves and get that clarity. And it's like, oh, I see. But I think if you're willing to Again, it's been painful for me, I will say. If you're willing to let go of past versions of self. So for me, Kate, the life of the party, the people pleaser, everybody's best friend, everybody's cheerleader. That was great and it was a role. But I think I did it because I didn't feel worthy of doing that for myself. I felt like if I did it for you, then you would like me, we would be friends, and then I wouldn't be lonely and I would feel love, which psychologically is like, wow, when did you feel lonely and not feel love in your life? And then you go back to childhood without blaming parents. It's like they didn't have the capability to make me feel that way often. So just learning, just,
Yeah.
yeah, like spending some time. And I think it's the gift and challenge of a lifetime is to really spend more time with ourselves alone and sit with uncomfortable feelings. Again, it sounds like everyone's last thing they want to do. And people, how is that going to contribute to my success? Um, I think it contributes more than, for me, any degree I have, any training I have. It's kind of that like I feel like the rapper, it's kind of that street, like been shot 8 times, 50 Cent street cred.
You made me think of another good point. When we are sitting alone in our thoughts, and we will start scrolling and we'll see what this person is doing, what this person achieved, who's doing this right now. And what tips would you give for women that just constantly are honestly playing the comparison game? Because you are maybe inspired by this person, but you also can just feel that FOMO, or that, oh, that's not me feeling.
Yeah, I think I just heard like their path, their journey. And I'll just give a personal example too. And I feel like everything's just, I share is vulnerable. But for instance, I'll be spending, and it's weird because I'm like good with it. But as I'm about to say, I'm like, I got emotional. Um, I'll be spending Christmas alone in a brand new home and not my favorite place. And I'm at peace with it because A, I'm tired and need the rest. And B, I love myself very much. And C, I've got lots of movies and shows to catch up on. And when I told this to my coach who has a 1-year-old and a bunch of like step kids and stuff, she's like, oh, it sounds so nice. So I think so much of it is I know. I love saying, even I said to my trainer the other day that I slept until 10 or something. And he was like, he's a 3-year-old and is a personal trainer at work every day at 6 a.m. And he was like, oh my God, that sounds so good. And so I like saying these things. Sometimes you're worried you're going to be judged, especially, again, people like yourself with small children. But I love saying it to you guys, not to piss you off. But again, you're on your own journey, but because it makes me appreciate it that much more. Because part of me would be like, I didn't have my dream job to go to at 8 a.m. So I was just slept until 10. I mean, I was up very late, but even Christmas alone, in my heart, and like I'm going to see everyone's families on social media. I think now I've been around enough families to be like, I see that photo, but I know what it's like at their house and I don't want that chaos. Also, when I'm alone this Christmas, it isn't hocus pocus, or as the kids would say, delulu, but I feel like I will say and feel this is my last Christmas alone. I feel that I'm meeting my life partner soon. And so next Christmas, I will be with him, or I will be with my best friend who invited me in San Francisco, can't go because of work, or I'll be with my new puppy. So I think it's perspective. And we all know this, but it's the practice of everything isn't as it seems. And I think being grateful for, even if it's that one thing, I'm grateful that I don't have to get dressed today. I don't have to hang out with people I don't like today. For me, I'm like, I don't have to pretend today. I don't have to deal with airports. And I can just enjoy being cozy. So let me buy myself a new extra blanket right?
Yeah. Well, and that's a great segue. So we are hitting the end of the year. And a lot of times at the end of the year, we look back and reflect. And we can look back at our achievements and everything that we did this year. We can also look back and think about what maybe didn't happen or what we didn't achieve that we wanted to achieve, the partner that we didn't get that we expected by the end of the year, we're going to have this, we're going to have X, Y, and Z. And I want to know, do you have any advice for our listeners when it comes to those feelings?
Yeah, for me, when you were saying that, I heard and feel in my body, which I know is the truth, is God is refining you. If you don't believe in God, spirit, universe, higher power, nature, whatever, your higher self, your wisdom, you're being refined in that season. And I think instead of beating ourselves up, which used to be my go-to of what you didn't do, what didn't happen, what you felt was promised to you and it didn't come true yet, is all the things that you were saved from. For instance, my second to last day in California could have been a fatal car accident, but my car saved my life. Uh, Sam, my angel, a force bigger than me, saved my life. So that car accident was scary as hell, a huge inconvenience, but I'm alive. I walked away from it without a scratch. I look at all the things that quote unquote went wrong, or the delays or the disruptions or the distractions, and I just think, but I'm still here. I saw something today that said about 2025. It was like, but I didn't die, and it's like, that's the big celebration take. It's like all this shit went down, but I didn't die. I'm alive. And, you kind of laugh about it, but I think it's taking a moment to those blessings. Like, I think because this big thing I really wanted didn't work out, I got to spend 3 weeks with one of my best friends at her like phenomenal property in Healdsburg, California, and care for rescue horses and donkeys and mules every day and like cuddle with her dogs every day. She cooked me the most delicious meals I've ever had in my life every night. Like, I had my own house on her property. And I think, when am I going to be able to do that again? Maybe never. Maybe when I'm like 80 years old and retired. And so we sometimes dismiss these gorgeous gifts that we are given, and because this big thing didn't happen. Or for me, I'm like, okay, I didn't meet the husband yet. I'm like, I'm just so much more equipped to be an even better partner when I do meet him. We'll appreciate him that much more. And I think spending the time feeling into those emotions. But I think getting more pleasure from the simple things in life. Yeah, I'm breathing. I'm alive. Like, I feel healthy. I got to connect with you today. And why do I dismiss this interview? I'm like, well, this isn't some multi-million-dollar job. It's like, but I'm doing my favorite thing on earth, which is to connect genuinely with another human. Why am I dismissing that? So I think just slowing down, I think all that could be something like slowing down. And everybody knows this about social media too. But I think everyone's been to the home of the person with the perfect family picture and knows what's really happening on the other side of that. And, or as I like to say, like, when I worked as a model and was in a magazine, for instance, and I don't know why so many people want to be a model, first of all, that's a whole other story, but people are like, I want to do that. And I think, no, you don't. Like, do you know how many times I was told no before like that one job? And by the way, if you're in a magazine, editorials pay nothing. It's like $200 or something. At least it was then. And it's like, and why do you want to do that? To feel worthy that you're in Oprah magazine? It doesn't mean anything. It doesn't mean anything.
Mm-hmm. Well, and you said the correct word. You said, why are you doing this? Because I think from the outside, there's so many things we want until you say, okay, you can have that, but it's also going to come with this, 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 and this. And it's so easy to forget that if you're saying yes to this job, you're saying yes to this opportunity, you're also saying yes to these other things. So not only what do you want, but what are you willing to sacrifice and put up with?
I certainly have my moments. I was laughing with my coach, like, man, why couldn't I just be like the OF ho? Or like, why couldn't I sell my soul and be on a yacht right now? Which I could have, but then it's like you said, I would feel terrible about myself. I would not be living my life. I'd be like catering to somebody else's life. And in those worlds, there's often a lot of ugly stuff too. I mean, the Epstein files, are out. So it's like, I think sometimes, our lives are way better than we admit. And I think that every quote unquote awful thing that we think is happening is such a gift. And I can say that as someone who's just, you work through it and you work through it. And any opportunity to really get to know ourselves. Even I was having lunch by myself the other day and some man was like, "So why are you out to eat by yourself?" And I'm like, "I go out to eat by myself all the time. It's one of my favorite things to do. I like myself. It's peaceful, guaranteed good time." So I feel like 2026 is going to be an opportunity for people to really try something new and experiment. And maybe that news anchor who lost her job, maybe she has discovered or did a story where she loves animal rescue, and maybe she partners with someone to start an animal rescue and you know does coaching on the side. I have reinvented myself so many times. I highly recommend it. I finally have stopped judging myself for it. And the silver lining for me, instead of like, why am I such a weirdo who's changed so many times? I've just kind of been blocked from a quote unquote normal life. And now I see how special that is. And I'm never bored. And I've had so many experiences. And so some may look at me like, wow, like unmarried, childless, and whatever, doesn't have this or that stability. But I have freedom, which is not ironically my number one value is freedom. So again,
Yeah.
I could sit here today and be like, oh, because I don't feel happy every moment. But even as I think these conversations are important for self-reflection as well. So maybe everyone listening, do something like this with your sister, best friend, husband, wife, whomever, to have like ask each other these questions so you can process and you can self-reflect. Because I just got a reminder too, like my life is my own and I have 100% freedom. What more success could I hope for? Now there's other things I want, but I guarantee you if you do this exercise, what we're doing with someone you love, I think you'll discover some gems about yourself and your life.
Yeah, and I think you'll also discover that maybe those things that make you unique or different are actually your superpowers at the end of the day.
100%. And that there's a reason that you're doing what you're doing. Again, we hear all the things and all the quotes and all the TikToks, and you're exactly where you're meant to be. But maybe that's a thing too. If I'm exactly where I'm meant to be, like, what does this mean or what's coming next? And I think we all need to let ourselves off the hook a bit more and offer ourselves more love and more grace. And you really start doing more of this work, I promise you, you will become a match for better people, better opportunities. And there really, really is something to that. It's just even like energetics and like universal laws, but also my own personal experience.
And as we head into 2026, how can people go about trying to achieve their goals?
Well, I think you got to get clear on what your goals are. Um, so let's say I want to be a news anchor in a top 10 market. Okay, great. And then why is that your goal? And I'll even do myself. That was a goal at some point. It's like, well, it's prestigious and it's like you're the best and obviously more money and more so there's all of that. But then it's okay, well, how, I think especially with coaching, what I learned is really impactful is to bring feelings and emotion into things because our emotions drive absolutely everything that we do, whether it's joy or rage or fear or anger or happiness. So how would it feel to be, let's say, Philadelphia? How would it feel? I think it's market 4. How would it feel to be a news anchor in market number 4, Philadelphia? And why do you want that? I think it's just like it's going down that. And then I think having to also ask, well, what if that goes away? Or so getting clear, asking yourselves those questions. And I think it is important to come up with a game plan, but the game plan is kind of the who, what, where, why, how, and how are you going to do it? And then have some action steps that you put into place. But I think the more you can say it out loud, or I think working with a coach or therapist, and then being able to get out your notepad and really mapping it out for yourself so it's clear and not just go into it blindly, but having a plan. But you'll get your best plan by first sitting quietly. I know people have some objections to this and listening, getting really quiet. Um,
Yeah.
I think too, we talk about social media or things. I've let a lot of people go this year in my life. And so that there's moments where that feels sad or I question or it's hurtful. And then when I get really clear and quiet, it's because of that, I have had more time to really work on myself to get in the best shape of my life. Because when I'm not at all those lunches with people who don't really like me or care for me or can't really show up for me, I'm at the gym or I'm doing a podcast or I'm reading a book or I'm resting and improving and getting better. Um, so I think it's carving out that time that you are completely not distracted. And I know that's hard for moms, and I know it's hard for young people, and the phone's always on. But um, really starting to listen to that voice, and you'll know it's the right voice, your higher self, your wisdom, God, when it's loving, when it's kind. Because sometimes I get quiet and the voice is, why'd you say that dumb thing? You totally bombed that airing. What's going on with your hair today? That's not the voice I'm talking about. That's the voice that we're releasing and letting go of and saying nobody invited you and you can sit back down and no one's interested in your opinion.
How do we also not let fear get in our own way? Because when we sit in silence and we map out what we want next year, I want this, I want this, I want this. On the same token, we can also have this fear of trying or going for this, this, and this. So, do you have any tips there?
Yeah, I think you got to have a sense of humor, and not everything is always going to work out for us, but that's for a reason. And if you can keep in mind, like I was protected because that didn't go my way. And sometimes, listen, it sucks. And speaking of social media, I see things, and I'm sure I'm not even like being a jerk here. There are people with like not much talent who are crushing it. They're con artists. They're marketing geniuses in some way. I see that all the time. I think sometimes the best of the best talent is not doing that great financially or in material terms. Why some people who aren't that great are crushing it. So sometimes it is unfair. Sometimes it does suck. But again, we're focusing on our own journey. I'd rather, be a fine wine than have peaked in high school, for instance. So it's like you feel like it's taken a while. You're a fine wine. You got a special plan and mission and stay with it. But it is helpful to have people that you can call to remind you. But ultimately, the people you call, it's like, I know, like if we've been friends for 20 years, I know you love me, but it's like you got a kid. And I've had to remind myself of that. The people with kids, they're unavailable a lot. The other best friend, like the people I'm friends with, they've got big careers. They're unavailable a lot. And so it does come back to you got to show up. You got to show up for yourself. And I think the more that you can just like get knocked down and get back up again, like fear right now, I'm like, you think I'm scared? Like, do you know what I just overcame? And so I think that answers another question, or that's another important thing to say is, you go through enough stuff that sucks, you just become unstoppable. And it's kind of like, thank you. And then you get to show up, especially if we're talking to media people here, you get to show up. You can tell who's kind of faking it on television, whatever role, like they're doing the performance, they're doing their job. But how about you just show up like fully embodied as yourself, whether you're doing the weather or you're, doing sports or you're on QVC or you're on a podcast where people can feel that. Like this person is, I feel like people can feel it from me. I used to have to try harder, fake it till you make it. And now it's just like who I am, but only because I've like done the work, and it's not sexy or fun often.
Yeah, it's also a good reminder that we evolve as people. Over time, we enter new phases and we evolve. And it's a great reminder that our friends, our family, others also evolve at the same time. So our friend that was once our friend is now still our friend, but is also a mother. And so that person is in a different phase of their life, I am in a different phase of my life. And it's kind of having that understanding that each person is going through different chapters while you are as well.
Yeah. And I think that not everybody is meant to be a lifer, and not everybody's meant to come to the next phase. And depending on
Yeah.
what you're doing. I mean, my friend said to me years ago, and it was such a good point, but you think of like an Oprah Winfrey. She has one friend, Gayle King. She's a million acquaintances. She knows everybody. But in terms of friends, she has one. And remember when my friend said that at the time, I had like a million friends, and now I have a few friends. And again, there's days where I'm like, wow, I've quote unquote lost a lot of people, and nothing happened. And I wish them well and they wish me well. Some of them still are like, why don't we ever hang out? Or I know there's some feelings there, but if you're not rooting for me, if you're not celebrating me, if you like, there's people who haven't even acknowledged that I wrote a book, which was one of my favorite accomplishments, but then they want to go to lunch. It's like, we're not in alignment. And so I think it's okay too, to just realize that without judging ourselves or others, we're not in alignment anymore with values, maybe a phase of life. But a quote I saw that really resonated, sadly, but also liberating quote. When you go through your darkest times alone, you don't care who stays in your life. It's like, I made it through the fire with nobody. The people who were really there for me were hired professionals. And so it's like, yeah, I'll go have lunch with you. But so again, when I say that out loud, I'm like, what a great thing, because I've got me. So I think that's the benefit if you are going through a difficult time. How great. When you don't have anyone to lean on, it's going to be hard. Please find someone, at least a professional, but then you learn how to lean on yourself. And then you get to show up pure in your relationships. I'm not hanging out with you because I hope you hook me up with a job. You're not hanging out with me because you like my shirt and you like my hair and you like how we look together walking down the street. That's usually like a man thing. Your relationships become more genuine. Instead of, there's a lot of transactional. I really learned that the hard way, that many of my relationships, like a lot of people, especially in an industry like this, there's a lot of transactional relationships. And I just saw Ed Sheeran talk about that in his documentary when I believe it was his grandfather died. And he's from UK, as you know, was living in Los Angeles, and he was at a party. And he's like, I left and I went back to England because he's like, while he knew everyone in there and everyone quote unquote loved him or liked him, he said, nobody at this party cares that my grandfather just died. So he moved back to England. And it was very symbolic for a season that I've been in.
Yeah. Yeah, I think in this day and age too, and women that live all across the country, we market jump. We go from market to market to market. You're just inevitably going market to market to market. Your circle of friends becomes smaller and smaller. And sometimes, honestly, that can feel like it sucks.
Yeah. And
It can
it's
feel like you don't
isolating.
have it can feel isolating. It can feel like you don't have as many friends that you grew up thinking that you were going to have later in life.
Yeah. I think the good thing about that, yes, I want to acknowledge that because that has certainly been this last couple years in my life with family and friends. And candidly, there's moments it's been heartbreaking and devastating, and something that nobody teaches, you don't hear about, you don't really think about unless you're on a deep healing journey, is that when you stop self-abandoning, you will lose the majority of people in your life because people benefit from you abandoning yourself to cater to their needs, to absorb their mistreatment, to be their cheerleader. So what I say to that is, we release people, but then you make space for that Gail King type of lifelong best friend. You make space for yourself. And why do we minimize the friendship, the relationship we have with ourselves? I mean, one of my favorite things to do is to just be in my pajamas and robe and slippers alone at home and watch TikTok and have some yummy food. And if a dog is ideal, or like talk to the plants, care for the plants, but just like have a moment of relaxing. Maybe it's my age group too. I sound older now, but you'll start to appreciate it when you get older.
Doesn't sound old. I'm a parent. Doesn't sound old. I started making reservations earlier and earlier and earlier, and now like the dinner reservations hitting 4:30. I don't think there's earlier dinner reservations than 4:30. So
okay, you're making me feel better. You're making me feel so much better, because sometimes I'm like, are we 80 now? Like, what's happening? It's so funny you said that, because even I was like, 5 o'clock, time for dinner. Yeah.
yeah, no, even with New Year's Eve, I'm like, Okay, we can do dinner at 5:30 so that we can get home at 7:30 so we can just sit at home and watch the ball drop because who wants to go to a party? Not me.
Oh, so this is good because it's different seasons of life. And so I think like we would have hated what we just said when we were like 22, 25. So this is, I think, embracing the different seasons of our lives and the different seasons, even like fall, stuff falling away, winter. It's like, ooh, not you, you're in California, but like still even in California, like the LA is a totally different vibe in the winter. Like it's still maybe if the weather's nice, but you still am like, it's not the same summery vibe. You want to just we're tired. I just want to acknowledge everybody being exhausted as well. I think this year even we've all lived longer than a year. This year in particular, I think was challenging. Um, and so it sounds counterintuitive, but I think if people can look at rest and rejuvenation and relaxation as being productive and you're achieving health when you do that. And so when you show up, you're more of yourself and therefore attracting better. Maybe people will embrace the early, I don't want to say bedtime, I stay up way too late, but the early time at home to just
Yeah.
relax. Ooh.
How do we show up as leaders in a newsroom or in whatever job that we're in? How can we show up as true leaders?
I think the best thing I read about leadership years ago, I forget who said it, but it articulated what I believed, which is that a leader is someone who cares the most. So I think, again, first and foremost, we have to start by caring for ourselves, our well being, our opinions, our health. But it's genuinely caring about other people. And I hate to say it, but in this line of work, I don't see a lot of good leadership. Yes, there's stress and all of that. It's very backstabbing. It's dog eat dog. I think it's a lot of industries. I even see it now with media stuff. Like I should be able to call up a contact and be like, hey, could you connect me with so and so? Whether it's to get a job, to have them on a podcast, to ask them to be at my charity event or whatever. And a lot of people don't respond. And it's such a scarcity mindset because it's like we should all be helping one another. I'm not some random off the street. If you called me, if I was able and you said, hey, can you introduce me to so and so to be on my podcast? If I had a relationship with them, I'd like, why would I not do that? And we just met. So I think being a good leader is genuinely caring about other people. And it's the same with parenting. You're like, well, I'm a good parent. I tell my kid I love them every night. And I said, okay, great. But are you doing the work on yourself where you can show up? Even my trainer says all the time, he's like, do you know how you'll be taken so much more seriously as a CEO if you're fit versus if you're way out of shape? So, but what about being mentally fit and emotionally fit? So I think being able to pay a genuine compliment, to take the time to say like, hey, I watched your live shot and it was so good. I when I'm in media, like let's say you did a weather segment if I was coming on next, this is just how I am. First of all, when you're out there doing it, because as you know, there's a lot of time people either staring at you on set or all these people around. And so I will give you good energy. So I think we give each other the good energy. And then when you come off set, I'll be like, that was awesome. Or if we don't have time to say that, I'll just kind of be like acknowledge you and be like, because usually it's the opposite, you know, or it's like, why are we scared to like, there's more than enough compliments to go around, you know, like, why are we scared to be like, you look gorgeous or like, that was awesome or like, girl, you nailed that. It's just like as if we all gotten too cool. And I notice when I do these things, sometimes people look at me like I'm crazy or like, it's like, I want something from them. And I'm like, no, it's just how I roll. That's why I feel lonely in these industries because I'm like a golden retriever puppy in the midst of like, I feel like some like abused dogs who want to bite me, you know? I'm like, okay, just trying to say hi. So I think taking the time to just or support people without them asking or be like, hey, I really enjoyed your segment or whatever. If you're older and like you've been around, like going up to the new person and instead of making them feel like threatened or insecure or something and just saying like, how's everything going? Do you need anything? Like I sit over there if you are ever struggling or want to celebrate or use me. Like I like doing that in a newsroom. Like even if I was only a couple years older and the person just, came from like you said, they just came from across the country. They've got no family there. It's just like, hey, want to get lunch sometime?
Yeah. I've I've watched news segments and immediately after emailed the
Mhm.
person to just say, good job with that. That was
Yes.
excellent, that
Yes.
live shot that you did. And I'll get response back with a big thank you because one, they don't get that
Nobody ever
ever.
does it. All you get is
They
what went
either are
wrong.
getting, yeah, they're either getting criticism or they're getting, can you do this for me? Rarely are they just getting an email saying, wow, that was great. Congratulations. You should be proud of yourself for doing that.
Thank you for that. And we never know what someone's going through. Even recently, I was having a doozy of a day, feeling really, really down. I don't even remember about what now. It's hormones or one thing or another. And it was a Facebook Messenger thing, which I rarely check, a message from my colleague from journalism school from Northwestern. Haven't spoken to him in a while. And he wrote me one of the nicest messages anyone's ever written me in my life. He had no idea, like, that I was going through a rough time and this another huge life transition and upheaval. And he also commented on what it was that I did for him that I had forgotten about. Again, I'm like, that's just who I am and how I show up. But he said, in journalism school, he said, you really pushed me and you really challenged me to go after what I wanted. And I'm paraphrasing, but essentially it was like, because of you, I did X, Y, and Z, and it really worked out. And I just want to thank you for being so like bold and, believing in me and encouraging me to reach out to this person or to do that. And he even said at the end, he's like, to me, you are such a legend. And you think like, who, me, little me? And he wasn't saying it again because I'm Oprah Winfrey and have $1 billion business. He said it to me. I was a legend in his eyes because I was kind to him. I like helped him be a better person. I believed in him. And I think I feel like this kind of answers everything that we've spoken about. We think we have to do and be this big, huge thing, but look at the impact we have when we send an email, when we send a Facebook message, when we say, you did this for me 20 years ago, and because of you, I am this person. And that also answers like, what if mom and dad didn't give us what we need? It's like maybe the person in journalism school impacts you in a way that like mom or dad never could because I saw him and he saw me.
Mhm.
And he saw me so clearly that he sent me that message and it like made my whole freaking year. Something
Yeah.
that simple. And
Yeah.
this to me just wraps up and sums up like honestly everything we just spoke about because it's sadly rare and also so impactful, so simple, so heartfelt. Like gifts and stuff, I'd rather have someone write me a nice note than, you know what I mean? Because it's like
Yeah.
it's personal. It's like they see me.
Well, Kate, we went in a million different directions, but I know that this is still going to be so helpful for so many people that are in their different phases of life. But if people want to actually get some coaching from you, can they do that? And how would they go about doing that?
Yeah, just go over to my website and we can put it in the show notes, but it's kateeckman.tv. Do that. And my podcast, Rawish with Kate Eckman, I'm on hiatus now, but there's 50 incredible episodes that has something for everybody and just in-depth conversations. And, I like what we're talking about. And we proved our point where I think it's good to be quote unquote all over the place because it's a natural conversation. If you and I went to dinner, I don't think we would just talk about meteorology the whole time. We'd kind of go on different things because we're humans. So if you want to get more in touch with your humanity and your human side and explore some of this stuff, yeah, I'd love to connect with you. And I'm so glad people are here supporting you and your journey. And I love what you're doing. And I love supporting women who are taking a risk and being bold and putting themselves out there. So thank you for doing this because I know how much work it is. And like I said, if you look this stunning, being a mother of a small person and working, you are and dealing with a man too. We love men, but they can be messy and a lot to deal with. So I bow down to your greatness.